we go. If I can get that to stop focusing there. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Jim Pingle. You might know me from previous Hangouts. This is our August 2018 Hangout for pfSense. pfSense 244 topics we're covering this month are some shorter topics, things that they're not quite enough to fill up a whole Hangout, but they're still important. I wanted to go over them. So I grabbed a bunch of things. We're going to lump them together, and we'll do it this way. Just so some short topics today, sort of a mixed bag of stuff, not at all related to each other, but they're all part of 244, which is coming out very, very soon. First up, YouTube Live. I know I've been mentioning this every once in a while since I started the stream a little bit ago. This is our first Hangout on YouTube Live, so there's going to be some rough edges. If you have any problems, concerns, just type them up in the chat. If your video looks fuzzy, YouTube might have set your quality too low. Hit the gear to 720p. I tried to make that big enough you could read it even if you're down at like 144p. So, blame YouTube for that. I don't know why their auto does so low, but it does. But it's easy to get around. So this month, we will be doing NetGate news as always, and then our topics for 244. I'm going to talk about Coddle and FQ Coddle with limiters, captive portal authentication changes, captive portal page customization, some IPsec speed improvements, certificate management changes, and using a gateway group as your default gateway. Those are all newer change things that are coming up on 244. So first, our NetGate news. Our pfSense 244 release is coming in early September. We were hoping to have it out next week. We slipped by a little bit, not much. We're only got a handful of issues left we need to work out. If you want to know all the new features, you can pull up the release notes there. They're on the documentation website. As we close out things, and we're updating those notes, so there might be I think they're just like a day or two behind. Need to run through yet this afternoon and update that again. We also have our Tensor 1808 release up on AWS now. We do have hardware installs coming. They're supported now in 1808, and we're going to have those out on our own hardware fairly soon. New in the 1808 release, we've got NACM access control, NTP server in there, an improved DHCP server support, DNS resolver, which is unbound, just like pfSense uses. IPsec accelerator support, like QAT cards and AES-NI and whatnot, and RESTConf server management is built into the CLI, so it's not something you have to manage yourself outside of Tensor now. And there's a link to the release notes for that as well. All of our past and present Hangouts are now on YouTube. They're all free for everybody. We don't have there's none that we've held back. For a while, we were holding back a year's worth and then just putting the ones that were over a year old out there. But now everything is out on YouTube. You can read about it on our blog. We have our video section of our website where they're all embedded through there with additional information. We're working on getting the slides linked in all of the video descriptions. Those should, if you're missing the slides, they'll be up in the very near future. pfSense book is now free for everyone as well. You can read the blog post about that, or just link to the netgate.com/docs/pfSense/book. And there is some overlap of content between that and the old wiki content, so we're kind of going to merge those a little bit and move anything that's needs to come from the wiki into the book, and remove some of the stuff from the wiki that's already in the book, so we don't have so much duplication of information there. But we're still working on the plan for that. That'll be happening over time. There's still a couple of chances left to win a limited edition Miniboard Turbo Dual Ethernet for taking our pfSense user survey. There's a link there to the survey. We were giving away 4 of them, I think 1 a week, and I think we've given away 2 already, so there's still 2 more out there. You can hit that link, take the survey, and get in the drawing. It's really cool. It's got flames and everything on it. Pretty awesome. We got our SG5100 desktops now available for pre-order. It'll be shipping in mid-September. It's $799. It's got an Intel Atom C3558, 4 gig of RAM. It's actually upgradable. You can go up to, I think, 16 gig, 8 gig of eMMC disk built into it, but you can also drop an M2 disk or a SATA disk in there. It's got 6 Intel 1 gig interfaces. They're actually discrete interfaces. 2 of them are IGB, 4 IX. IX is, I know some people always think of it as a 10 gig driver, but it can really do 1 gig, and these are 1 gig copper ports. So all of them are 1 gig copper ports, but 2 different drivers, there's 2 different chipsets. on there. That the 5100 is passively cooled, so like the case is part of the heatsink. It's got some fins and stuff on top. We don't have a rack mount option for it because it would require radically different cooling, primarily. So I mean, I wouldn't recommend putting that one in a rack. Some people, I'm sure, some people will put it on a shelf in a rack, but you just got to watch the temperature with that one. You can hit the website for the information on that as well. And those will be shipping very, very soon. We also next month have our pfSense supplementals course. We've had that before. It's a one-day course that covers some of the packages we've got out there. So if you're interested in that, you can hit the link and sign up for training. See someone asking if the book is based on 2.2 or 2.4. Some parts were updated for 2.3. I think everything should be up to around 2.3. We're trying to work through it and get everything updated to 2.4 stuff. It's just kind of slow going, but I'm fairly certain we've got through almost everything and got it at least up to the 2.3 level, or later in 2.3 at least. Some stuff's up for 2.4, but we're going through the book in passes and getting that stuff all updated. Okay, so let's move on to the content here. First up, Coddle and FQ Coddle with limiters. I know some people are tempted to say CoDel, but apparently the creator calls it Coddle, so we follow what he says. We'll call it Coddle. It's short for controlled delay, and it is a scheduling algorithm. It's designed to combat buffer bloat on routers. One of its features is they call it a no knobs, just work algorithm, but there are some parameters to tweak if you need to, but for the most part, the defaults work very well. And if you're not sure what buffer bloat is, you can follow the link and read from the wiki. Basically, it's just because of overly large buffers on network equipment, including your network card on your firewall and even your PC, and especially on ISP routers. The larger buffers, if there's any kind of a problem, it'll end up causing a lot of latency as things degrade because there's just so much stuff in the buffers. So they can cause packet delay, also known as jitter. You can reduce your overall throughput. You might notice it like if you're doing a very large download or either VoIP or maybe like streaming Netflix on a high quality video or something like that. You might notice if it's taking a lot of your bandwidth in one direction that your latency might skyrocket. It doesn't affect all ISPs equally because everybody's got different equipment. It seems to affect like cable ISPs a lot more than it does DSL. So you may not be a problem for you. It might be a huge problem for you. It all depends on your configuration and your ISP and everything else. So if you're not sure if it applies to you, you can follow the link there. There's a link at the dslreports.com/speed test. They have a buffer bloat test there that'll measure how awful it is for you. We've had several people, myself included, and some of our staff that had a very awful bloat score of like an F or something when we started, did this configuration that I'm about to read off to you here, and we moved up to an A. So it's a very useful configuration, but everybody might need different parameters. So I'm going to give you a good starting point, and then from there you can kind of build that up and or you maybe tweak things and see if you can get it better for you. So to do this, we're going to use limiters. And because of the way these limiters function, using an alternate scheduler than the default requires we have to run this traffic through a child queue and not a limiter directly. So you'll see we're going to make 2 limiters and then 2 child queues. So you have a limiter for your downloads and then a child queue for downloads, a limiter for uploads and a child queue for uploads. So you need all 4 of those. Even though we're only going to use the child queues, all 4 have to be defined. So don't try and skimp and just do one thing or another. Don't use the limiters directly, and I'll go over all that as we go, but need to make sure you do this exactly as I show, at least to start with. Okay, so let me break over here to an actual firewall and show you what we're going to do here. So first things first, you go to Firewall, Traffic Shaper on the Limiters tab. Now you hit New Limiter, and then we're going to fill this in like I've got here. So check Enable, say WAN down for your download limiter name, put in how much download bandwidth you have on your circuit. I've got a 10 meg down, 1 meg up cable line in this example. So I'm going to put 10 megabits per second here. No mask, whatever description you want. I chose WAN downloads. Now for a queue management algorithm, I chose Coddle. Now these parameters won't show up until after you save the first time. And you don't have to put anything in here. These are actually the defaults. For your scheduler, choose FQ Coddle. And same with these parameters here. These are just the defaults. You can just leave them blank and it'll fill those in automatically. Queue length, I don't have anything specified on this one, but if you have a higher throughput length, you might need a bigger queue. So kind of tweak what it is for you. Some people start at like 1,000, but just leave it. You can leave it blank by default. And then you can check ECN. It can help with TCP. It helps inform the other side they need to slow down when you get near your total throughput. So it's just a nice way to do it. If everything in between you supports it, it helps rather than just dropping. It can actually help to naturally slow it down. So when you're all done with that, click Save. And what I like to do, just to make absolutely sure we're going to do the right thing, and because the limiters page, in some browsers and for some people, it doesn't behave quite like it should for everybody. I just click WAN down again just to refresh the WAN down page. And then I come down to the bottom and click Add New Queue. And this will add a new child queue. And it looks a little bit different than the limiter screen. Mainly, you'll notice it doesn't have the bandwidth section. So just check Enable this queue. I call it WAN down queue. You could call it queue WAN down or whatever you want, as long as it's significant to you what it is. Again, no mask, because we would just want one big bucket here. Call it the WAN download queue. And again, choose Coddle for the queue management algorithm. Parameters, again, leave them blank. Queue length, it's up to you. It could be 100, it could be 1,000. ECN, check that again, and then save. Now we need to go through this whole thing again for uploads. So the next one we have, WAN up, very similar to WAN down, just the opposite direction. I've got 1 megabit per second upload and no mask. WAN uploads in my description, Coddle, FQ Coddle, ECN, save, then I refresh, add new queue, and do the same as the downloads. I got WAN up queue this time, no mask, WAN upload queue, Coddle again, check ECN. So they should look, your pairs of limiters and queues here should look almost identical except for the names, the throughput, and pretty much just the names and the throughput and your queue name and queue throughput. Your descriptions should be different as well, just to make sure you recognize what's there. So when you have all 4 of these entries, then you can click Apply Changes. And if for some reason, like I said, the limiter page, we have seen reports. I haven't seen this happen to me, but somebody said when they hit Apply Changes, they got an error. You can either hit limiters and hit Apply Changes again, or refresh like WAN down and hit Apply Changes there. I haven't seen that happen. If I could reproduce it, we could fix it. But somebody told me that happened the other day. So one way or another, get those applied. And after we apply them, now we need to go to floating rules. I want to explain to you a little bit thing here first. We're accomplishing this with a floating rule. It'll be outbound on the WAN. And we have to have separate rules for IPv4 and IPv6 because we have to set a gateway on these rules. And in order to set a gateway, you have to use an individual address family like IPv4 or IPv6. You can't use a combo rule and do that. So I've only got the v4 example shown here. And that's, hold on, need to click something in here. I don't want it to expire my session. Okay, so we go to Firewall, Rules, Floating tab. And in our Floating tab, made a new rule. Now I put this rule at the bottom of my list. There's only one rule here, but if you have other rules, depending on what those are doing, you might want to put it at the bottom, you might want to put it at the top. If you've got rules that are blocking things outbound, you'd want to put this at the bottom. If you've got rules that are like matching with alt queue, it may not matter a whole much because the match rules and the pass rules, but still you'd want to put it probably above some other things there. But you might need to see what exactly works for your specific setup. At the bottom may tend to be better, but it's all, it's up to your configuration there. If you're passing things in other rules, you may have to set these limiters on your other pass rules if you have specific requirements. I'm just going to do a generic pass outbound for everything. This will take the place of the built-in pass out everything rule and just will apply the limiter instead. So our action is going to be pass. Interface is the WAN, quick checked. I guess I don't have quick checked in the slides there. I'll get that updated before we go out. So you do want to make sure you check quick. Direction is out. Address family is IPv4. Protocol any. Source any. Destination any. Description Coddle limiters. And then click show advanced or display advanced. Then we come down here to the bottom and we have gateway. We need to select our IPv4 gateway in this case. And then for the in-out pipe, the inbound is the WAN up queue and outbound is WAN down queue. Now this might be backwards intuitively. You might be thinking that sounds weird, but because this is an outbound rule on WAN, things are a little backwards. So traffic coming into a pipe on an outbound rule is uploads. Traffic coming out of a pipe on an outbound rule is downloads. So just make sure you do that. In is upload queue, WAN is download queue, or out is download queue. And you have make sure you are using the queues there and not the limiters directly, because you'll have all the choices in the list, but you need to make sure to only use the queue entries. And then save, and then apply changes. And that's it. So after you apply changes, new connections will start using this, but existing connections won't. So typically in a situation like this, you want to reset your states to force all of your traffic to use the new limits. Whether or not you want to do that immediately is up to you. Typically what I like to do is test with a new connection, like you open up a new like incognito mode or private browsing mode window, open up that speed test and run it there, which should make sure you are using a completely new connection that's going to hit these limiters. And if it's okay there after a little bit of testing, then you might reset changes, or you can make tweaks and refresh things and then close and reopen that private browsing window and do it again. So after you've run your test to confirm your behavior, if everything is great, great. If it's not, you might need to tweak some of those parameters on the limiters. There are several different parameters there for adjusting the queues in various ways. The specifics of how to adjust those, you can go through. There's a forum thread I'm linking here. You can run through the end of that thread. It's a very, very long thread, but the last few pages have some pretty useful posts talking about how different people have done this. And you might even find that Coddle doesn't work very well for you. There's other queues and schedulers in there like Pi and things that you might try. But once you have this general framework in place, it's very easy to flip those around and try them out and see what works for you. And if all else fails, if it doesn't work, you can just disable that firewall rule and then reset your states again, and everything will go back the way it was. It's not the kind of thing that should cut you off, but for some reason it does. You always have a way back in. But no, I haven't seen anything cause a problem like that unless you put in a wildly inaccurate bandwidth measurement. If you put in something that's super, super slow, I've seen it where it will feel like it's cut you off, but it was just the bandwidth was set too low that it squashed everything down. So just make sure your bandwidths are right and you should be okay. Okay. Moving right along, we'll talk about a little bit the captive portal authentication changes. So in captive portal, before it supported local users and it supported radius, and that was it. And the radius settings were in the captive portal zone, and the captive portal zone settings were completely isolated from the user manager. Now, the user manager settings might have duplicated what you had in the captive portal or vice versa if you use the same radius server for different things. Like you say you use the same radius server for OpenVPN and captive portal, you might have had to have two different definitions, which was really redundant, kind of sloppy there. So what we have done is integrated the captive portal authentication back into the user manager. So now, as a side effect of that, you can use LDAP for captive portal authentication. So it doesn't have all the same features as Radius does, but you can use it to authenticate your users for the portal. So now you can use local database, Radius, and LDAP all for captive portal. There are entries that you had in Radius, like say you had 5 portals set up, 5 different interfaces, each one of those for Radius, it will take those Radius server configurations from your portal and import all of those into the user manager. And it does that individually. Like even if they're the same settings, it would still import them as separate entries. So you might get a little bit of some redundancy there on upgrade, but afterwards, if you know they're all the same, you can pick one to keep, set all your portals to use the one you're going to keep, and then remove the redundant ones and just come down to just one. But on upgrade, it tries its hardest just to preserve your existing behavior. So it doesn't want to rock the boat too much, which is why it imports them that way. But afterwards, you're free to do whatever you want. There are still some portal specific settings in here, but let me show you what the screen looks like now. If we come down here, authentication method, you can still select use a backend, or you can select none, or there's Radius MAC authentication, which is the special mode that sends the MAC address as the username. Either way, you have your authentication server and your secondary authentication server like before. Now your primary and backup, like if you need 2 different Radius servers, like one backs the other up, you'd select them both on this list. The secondary authentication server was for a completely different authentication source. Like we have some people that used local or Radius logins with usernames and passwords for one thing, and then they had a separate setup where they use like number and PIN cards for Radius access for a secondary authentication source, and that actually went to a third-party vendor. So you can use that if you want by selecting a secondary authentication server, but most people don't have that, so just have one. And then you have some few Radius options here that are specific to the portal. These were not imported into the user manager because they were more specific to individual things in portal behavior. So rather than have it still keep some of that redundancy, making you have multiple Radius server entries for slightly different behavior, we went with this way, with keeping some of the sorted settings in the portal. So that's the primary difference there. I mean, there's also, you can select accounting, and along the way here, and cleaning a lot of this up and moving the authentication over, there were a number of outstanding bugs that affected Radius with Captive Portal, and certain just different login behaviors, or the way certain things behaved, or how accounting behaved, and things were just not right for some people, even though they were okay for others. So we're hoping that a lot of that is fixed up. We have a much more comprehensive list of things that have been fixed on the release notes. So do check those out. The next big thing we have is our customization. Now, before in your portal, if you had custom HTML, you just see this section here where you could upload your individual portal page here, like you've got live view, whatever, and you can completely edit your own HTML, upload your own files, and get all that stuff in the portal. But it was all very manual process. You had to do everything by hand, even if you just wanted to change one little thing. So what we've done on 2.4.4 is we've gone and changed the portal settings a bit. Now, by default, we have a brand new captive portal page. It's got a more modern design, up-to-date design. It supports a background image and a logo image, all new CSS and everything else. And but it still adapts based on your configuration changes. So, like for example, if you turn vouchers on, it'll add a voucher field to your login page automatically. And we're trying to make it as easy as possible for people to customize this without having to go and edit HTML on their own. So you can do a custom logo, custom background. You can even set up terms and conditions, and you don't have to set up any kind of HTML. So here's what you'll see by default. If you want to use a custom logo, check the box, choose a file, and upload. If you want to display a custom background image, check it, upload it, and you're fine. You can type in your terms and conditions here. Now, this is plain text only. It'll strip out HTML, so you just want to do that. And I've just got, the classic Bill and Ted line, be excellent to each other. That's my terms and conditions. And if you want to, instead of doing our custom page, use custom HTML, you can always check this, use custom page, and bam, it gives you the other controls. But let's look at how this looks to a user. That's what they'll see. By default, out of the box, it's got the pfSense logo, nice gradient background. It's got username and password fields. You put in your voucher code. And it's got a checkbox to agree with the terms and conditions because I turned that on. And the login button will light up once they've agreed. If you click terms and conditions, it'll scroll you down here to the box where the terms and conditions are displayed at the bottom. So the vast majority of people are going to be covered by this because really all they wanted to do was their own logo and maybe some terms and conditions and a custom, check the box to proceed type of thing. And the old page just wasn't cutting it anymore. So this should be a big usability improvement for a lot of people, if I could get the right word out there. So we're very happy with how that turned out. It looks really nice. And it's made with love by NetGate. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our IPsec speed improvements. There's a new option called Asynchronous Cryptography. Now what it does, it lets the cryptography load be spread across multiple CPU cores. So say you've got an 8-core box and you've got one tunnel, it can actually spread that out and do multi-core crypto. And it's just one checkbox you can turn on. It's under VPN and IPsec in the Advanced Settings tab. You just check Asynchronous Cryptography, and I'll show you where that is. Let's go to here. I've got some tunnels on this one. VPN, IPsec, Advanced Settings, and all the way down here at the bottom, got Use Asynchronous Crypto Mode to parallelize multiple cryptography jobs. So the jobs are still handled in the proper order, so you don't get out of order packets. But it has seen a gigantic speed improvement. At least on single tunnels. We're still running some performance numbers, so we know exactly how good this is. But if you've got like one tunnel or a couple of tunnels, or at least less tunnels than you have CPU cores, you're probably going to get a big benefit out of this. But if you have a lot of tunnels or not very many cores, you're not going to see the same kind of improvement. So in some of these performance gains may disappear. You might even end up slower with this option if you have a large number of tunnels. So kind of a trade-off here, but we don't really know a lot about every single aspect of all the performance because we're still trying to test this out. But and everybody's workload and circuits and everything and hardware is going to be different. So we're trying to get some good baseline numbers yet. We're going to update our posts and stuff about it when we do. But we have seen some very dramatic improvements. We had one bit of hardware that went from 400 megabits per second of IPsec to like 905 or something, the theoretical max of IPsec on a 1 gig interface with 1500 byte packets with MSS clamping. I think it ended up being like 1404 MSS clamping, something like that. So just super impressive performance gain there. And especially if you have AES-NI, it'll help there too. So, but it should help even without it. Again, need lots of fast cores to get the best benefit out of it. All right, so next up we got our certificate management changes. And these are, they may seem a little minor, but they're very, very convenient changes for most people here. You might not even realize how much you like it until you've used it. So we revamped our security certificate forms to conform to RFC 5280. Before we had required all these fields, and really none of them except the common name were required. The email address field was still there, and that had been deprecated years ago. So when you create a new CA or certificate now, the default action is going to be to create an internal entry. Long time ago, when we first put in the cert manager, people going there were going to be importing the certificates a lot, so we did that as by default for a while. But now people are using the cert manager; they're wanting to create things. So there was always a couple extra clicks to get to what most people wanted out of the box. So now, when you click Add, the first thing it's going to do is take you to the Create form. And if you'll notice, this is rearranged slightly because the only subject component you need is common name. So we move that up to the top to show it being significant here. Now, the rest of these are still optional. You got country code, state, city, organization, and organizational unit. Those are all optional. If you are needing a email address on a certificate or an email address, you would put that in as a subject alternative name with the email address type here. So most people won't need that, and it was really not necessary. And somebody says, does cert common name get duplicated to subject alt name? Yes, we've been doing that for a couple of versions now. Whatever you put in for your common name will automatically get put in as a SAN, an FQDN SAN. You can, if you manually add it and it's the same, it'll only do it once. But you can add multiple SANs, whatever you want. If you're creating an internal certificate, that works just fine. If you're doing a signing request to submit elsewhere, you can put the sans on the signing request, but the far side doesn't have to honor that. That's really up to the CA. But in pfSense, it'll honor it, and you can set those. When you sign it, you can set them again. But you still need some of the meta information. You still need to pick like your certificate authority, your key length, your digest, your lifetime. But as far as the subject goes, the only thing you need is the common name. And we've made this change here in the CA manager, the cert manager. If in OpenVPN, in the wizard, it's all done like that now. Even if you notice on a brand new installation, if you look at the certificate we generate for the GUI, it now only has a common name, and I think in the organization we put a description about it being a pfSense certificate. But before, it had a lot of bunk information in there that really wasn't relevant, but that's all gone now. So, but if we go to the wizard, I just want to show you here. Next, come on. This box is taking forever here. Next. Hitting a fairly slow VM here. I'm not sure why it's taken a while, but we'll see. Come on. In here too, we've got lifetime, country code, state or province, city, and organization. So, and this is all copied over from the CA, but you can blank it all out except for the descriptive name, which on the wizard is taken also as the common name. So everything should be a lot more consistent now. And like if you go to the user manager, when you make a new user, if you opt to create a user certificate, when you make it here, it'll do it right. It will only put in the common name. And when you look at your certificates, like these, I've got a couple of short ones here. You can see the subject is just CN equals, and the SAN is has the DNS entry for the same as the common name. So all that's handled a lot nicer. You don't have to fill in all the unnecessary information anymore just because it seemed to require it. Now just blank it out or leave it blank, and you'll be good. All right, so last thing we're going to go over today is to just talk about a gateway group as your default gateway. So before we had, you just had your default gateway, and then you also might have had your default gateway switching enabled, but default gateway switching was kind of, I don't want to say dumb, it was just not very intelligent. It would just take your gateways in order. If your default went down, it would just choose the next one in line. Now that might not have actually been a valid gateway for internet connection. It might have been an internal line to another office. It might have been your LAN switch. It might have been a VPN gateway that really didn't go there. So it didn't give you a lot of control. And so for a lot of people, it didn't do what they wanted. But now you can set up a gateway group, and you can control not only which gateways are used, but the order in which they're used. So it does have to be a failover type gateway group where you have one gateway per tier. So let's look at this. If we go on here, let's go to system routing. And we'll see our new control down here at the bottom for default gateway. But first I want to go over to gateway groups, and I'll show you what my gateway looks like. My default group here, and this is just a name I chose. It doesn't have to be named this. You can name it whatever you want, whatever it allows in the field anyway. And I just set my WAN DHCP. So my first WAN is tier 1. My second WAN is tier 2. I just did member down. And now if I go back to routing, in my default gateway box, I just picked my default group. And that's it. That's all you got to do. Super easy. Now on upgrade, it tries to preserve whatever behavior you had before. So I think if you had default gateway switching on, it may set it up on automatic. If you had a dynamic WAN like a DHCP WAN gateway and you hadn't ever made changes to that gateway, and so there weren't any settings in the configuration, it may still go to default to automatic just because it was trying to preserve the behavior you had on upgrade, then it couldn't quite figure out what it was doing. If you had a specific gateway edited and chosen as default, it will keep that selected. So on upgrade, you shouldn't have to worry about anything. But once you're upgraded to 244, you can go over there, either make a new gateway group, or you can pick one you already have that's set up for failover as your default gateway, and that's that. So That's all I had planned to cover today. I don't know if anybody else had anything they wanted to ask about 244 coming up, or anybody had any particular issues with the YouTube Live Hangout we did today. Thankfully, I didn't lose power, knock on wood. And I know the video lags a little bit behind where I'm talking, so there's a little bit of a delay between what I say and me reading the chat. So if you have a question, go ahead and type it out, and I may be quiet for a minute while I let people type. I'm going to go back through the old chat messages too and see if I missed any questions that weren't already answered by others here. Let's see. No, all right. Well, good. I'm glad people thought the YouTube platform worked really well. I'm not terribly happy with the administrative side of it at the moment, but that's mostly because I was kind of frustrated with trying to get OBS Studio to do nice things, and I had to fall back to the Google Live on Air and Google Hangouts Live on Air, and it wasn't ideal. I had some weird issues where when I tried one on my private channel just to see how it worked, it would. I managed to somehow get a video stuck in a state where it thought I was still broadcasting, but it wouldn't let me back into it or shut the stream off, and I had to wait for 8 hours for it to time out. So that was a weird one, but I'm hoping that's things that are either going to be fixed by Google or something that procedural that I just need to work out in our internal documentation. No, don't click this button in this combination type of thing. So the frame rate was quite low. That was probably my lack of upload bandwidth combined with how Google Hangouts Live on Air broadcasts things, but I wasn't terribly concerned about the frame rate as much as clarity for people to see it, because most of the stuff I'm showing is not things you need to see real time. It's just going to be a static screen once I stop scrolling. So that should be, I'm hoping that's okay. But again, it's something I need to, maybe if I figure out how to get OBS better quality, I may have to get a faster internet connection here at home and just deal with the increased upload bandwidth requirements. Or yeah, it's true. If you might check your quality and make sure you're not set low, because YouTube automatically sets people down low, and if you joined later, you may not have seen my warning to change that so you're up on 720p. See, somebody says, are you planning to cover tunnel mode in depth after 244 comes out? You mean IPsec VTI or like the routed IPsec? I covered that a couple months ago already. A couple of minor things have changed in routed IPsec since then, but if you look back in our archive, our Hangout archive, here on the YouTube channel, it should be just like 2 or 3 videos back. There's a whole Hangout on routed IPsec. Let's see, somebody says 7100. Can the WAN interface be a member of a switch? Colo DSC provider handles left right. Well, on the 7100 by default, the LAN and the WAN are both discrete ports on VLANs on the internal switch. So if it works on the LAN, it should work on the WAN. Granted, it's still switch to switch, but it's auto MDIX, so you should be okay in terms of hooking everything up. So it should be okay. But let's see. Yeah, so we talk about the speed of scrolling. Yeah, the frame rate may be kind of low, but there are some other settings I can change. There is like a lower latency mode, and I think I chose the one that had the higher overall quality at the expense of buffering more and delaying more, just because I wasn't worried about the real-time interaction as much as I was worried about people being able to read the slides. But we can, I'll do some more internal tests, throughout the month. We'll see how it comes out. Okay, well, looks like that might be everything for this month. Well, thank you everybody for joining me for our first YouTube live experience. Yay. And Yeah, somebody says you don't want low latency mode. I'm with you there. I didn't try it because based on the description, it didn't sound like I wanted. So, but thank you, everybody. If you have any more questions, post them on the forum, post them on the pfSense subreddit. Hit us up one way or another. We'll try and get back to you, or even just tweet a message at us or find us on social media somewhere. One way or another, you can either get us idea topics for Hangouts or let us know any questions or concerns you had about the streaming format. And somebody says, yeah, press like and subscribe. Yeah. if you want to, that's entirely up to you. I'm not gonna say like smash that like button. But if you want to, that's entirely up to you. So we'll see everybody back here again next month. At least unless plans change, we're still intending to have one of these. Maybe we might skip a few months every once in a while here if we're busy, but we're still intending to have them around once a month, but usually the end of the month. But we'll let people know what our schedule's like, and we'll see everybody back in the future. Just keep an eye on the channel. If you subscribe to the channel, it will give you notifications when we go live, but we'll also try to get the word out on social media when we go live too. So thanks for joining me, and we'll see you back next month or next time we have a Hangout. Thank you.